Hey, buddy, hit that subscribe. Just a sec for you, but it means the world to me. I was standing in our sleek Palo Alto kitchen, barefoot on cold marble tiles, 6 months pregnant, and shaking like I'd just seen a ghost. My hands were sweaty as I held a folded note meant for my husband. Notes were our thing. Always had been. Words on paper. Fingers in motion. Quiet glances that said more than voices ever could. That's how love worked in our house. Or at least, that's what I believed. Behind me, I felt him step closer. Too close. Close enough that I could feel his breath brush my neck. I lifted the note over my shoulder so he could read it. And then he spoke. Not signed. Not written. Spoken. Clear. Calm. Male. Confident. Margaret, we need to talk. The note slipped from my fingers and fluttered to the floor like my whole reality just lost gravity. My heart slammed so hard I thought the baby might hear it. My husband, my deaf husband, had just used his voice. Let me rewind, because you don't just wake up one day married to a lie this big. I'm 68 now, old enough to understand that some stories only make sense when you start from the very beginning, even when it hurts like hell to go back there. Back then, it was 1991. I was 32, still single, still grinding at a San Francisco architecture firm that paid me just enough to survive and not enough to breathe. I lived in a tiny studio with one window, a temperamental heater, and dreams I kept postponing. Every Sunday, my mother called, and every Sunday, she reminded me, loud and clear, that I was running out of time. Your sister's pregnant again, she'd say casually. Mom, that's great. And Amy Johnson just got engaged. Remember her? She's 26. I'd stare out at the fog rolling over the bay, gripping the phone like it was the only thing keeping me upright. I'm fine, Mom. You're not fine. You're alone. She never said it with cruelty. That somehow made it worse. Truth is, I was lonely. Bone-deep lonely. I was tired of coming home to silence. Tired of being the third wheel at family dinners. Tired of pretending I didn't care when everyone else went home to someone who waited for them. So when my mother mentioned a man named Richard Hale, I didn't shut it down like I usually did. He's successful, she said. Smart. Handsome. But he's had an accident. That made me pause. He's deaf, she continued. Lost his hearing years ago. A lot of women couldn't handle that. But you've always been patient. Understanding. I should have heard the setup. Instead, I heard opportunity. A man who wouldn't judge my age. A man who wouldn't interrupt me mid-sentence. A man who might see me, not my timeline. I agreed to one dinner. Just one. Richard was magnetic, tall, well-dressed, sharp eyes that followed my lips when I spoke. He carried himself like a man who knew exactly who he was. At dinner, we passed notes like teenagers. When my clumsy sign language failed, he smiled instead of judging. One note still sticks with me. My mother says you're brilliant and stubborn. I laughed and wrote back. She's trying to sell me. His reply? She didn't hype you enough. That's when something cracked open in my chest. We started seeing each other regularly. Walks, dinners, long quiet moments that felt safe. I enrolled in sign language classes after work. Learned slowly, painfully, but he was patient, always patient. His mother adored me, watched us sign across the dinner table like it was a miracle, told me how lucky Richard was to find someone willing to accept his limitations. I wore that like a badge of honor. 8 months in, he proposed, writing the question in the sand at sunset. I cried so hard I couldn't even sign yes properly. We married 3 months later. Small ceremony. Interpreter present. Tears everywhere. That night, I waited, some silly part of me expecting a fairy tale moment where he'd suddenly speak. He didn't, and I fell asleep believing love didn't need sound. Life moved fast after that. Big house. Baby on the way. I quit my job when the pregnancy got hard. Everyone said it made sense, especially his mother. Focus on what really matters, she told me. I believed her, which brings me back to that kitchen. That note, that voice. I turned around slowly, one hand instinctively on my belly. My husband looked at me, really looked at me, and said the words that shattered everything I thought I knew. I'm not deaf. My ears rang. My vision blurred. My world cracked clean in half. And that's where I'll stop for now, because what he said next, why he did it, and who else knew the truth. Yeah, that part changes everything. I'm not deaf. The words didn't land all at once. They hit in waves, like my brain kept rejecting the signal. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline, the joke, the explanation written on paper. Nothing came. I can't hear you, he said again, slower this time. I always could. My knees buckled. I grabbed the edge of the counter, my pregnant belly pressing into cold granite, as if the house itself was trying to keep me upright. The baby kicked hard, sharp and sudden, like it sensed a panic flooding my body. You're joking, I whispered, or maybe I thought I whispered. You're messing with me. He shook his head. No accident. No hearing loss. No miracle recovery. It was never real. I laughed once. A short, broken sound. That's what people do when reality officially goes off the rails. So what? This is some kind of prank? I said, because if it is, it's sick. Like really sick. It wasn't a prank, he replied. It was a test. That word sucked all the air out of the room. A test. I repeated, tasting it like poison. You tested me? He ran a hand through his hair. Something I'd seen him do 100 times without realizing how normal it was. Too normal. After my ex left, he said, I didn't trust anyone. She said she loved me. But the second life got uncomfortable, she bailed. My mom thought, we both thought, I needed to know if someone would love me for who I really am. My heart pounded in my ears. Funny how I never noticed that sound before. So you lied, I said, for almost 2 years. I filtered out the wrong women. Filtered, like I was spam. I stepped back, my hands automatically protecting my stomach. Did your mother know? He hesitated. Just a beat. Just long enough. Oh my God. I breathed. She knew. She was trying to help, he said quickly. She thought. She watched me quit my job. I snapped. Watched me struggle through sign language classes. Watched me give up my independence because I thought my husband needed me. He opened his mouth to respond, but I was already past listening. You let me marry you under false pretenses, I said, my voice shaking. You let me get pregnant. I love you, he said. That part was real. I laughed again, louder this time. Real? You pretended to be disabled, so I'd stay. That's not love. That's manipulation. He tried to step closer. Don't. I warned. He froze. I don't even know who you are, I continued. Every moment we had, every note, every silent conversation was fake. It wasn't fake to me, he said. That makes it worse. He left that night, grabbed his keys, walked out like he hadn't just detonated my entire life. I don't remember turning off the stove. I don't remember sitting down. I just remember the smell of burnt food and the sound of my sister's voice on the phone when I finally broke. He was never deaf. I sobbed. None of it was real. Catherine showed up within minutes. Found me on the kitchen floor, surrounded by sign language books, ripping pages out like I could erase the past if I tore hard enough. She knew. I told her. His mother knew. And I think Mom knew too. The next call confirmed it. Silence on the line. That was my answer. I hung up and threw my phone across the room, so hard it shattered against the wall. That night, everything collapsed. My marriage, my trust, my relationship with my mother, and the version of myself I thought was strong and smart and impossible to fool. I was 6 months pregnant, unemployed, married to a stranger, and suddenly I had to decide, do I walk away from the father of my child, or stay with the man who built our entire relationship on a lie? And trust me, the choice wasn't as simple as it sounds. The days after the truth came out felt unreal, like I was walking through someone else's life wearing their skin. Richard kept calling. I didn't answer. He wrote letters. I didn't read them. He showed up at the house once, and I told him through the locked door that if he didn't leave, I'd call the cops. He left. That somehow hurt more than if he'd stayed. I moved in with my sister Catherine. Her guest room became my refuge. Half-unpacked suitcases, maternity clothes piled on a chair, my old work notebooks shoved under the bed like reminders of a life I'd given up too easily. Every night, my thoughts spiraled. Had he been laughing at me this whole time? Had I been some kind of experiment? Did I even love him, or the quiet version of him he invented? Catherine tried to be patient, but worry crept into her voice. "You're not eating enough," she said one morning, watching me push toast around my plate. "This stress isn't good for the baby." "I know." I snapped, then immediately felt guilty. "I'm sorry. I don't know what I'm doing anymore." "You're married," she said gently, "and you're having his child." The words hit hard. "I don't even know if I want to be married to him," I said. The room went silent. She looked at me like I just stepped off a cliff. "Maggie, you don't mean that." But part of me did, because the man I married, the patient, silent, gentle man, never existed. He was a character, a role, and I had fallen in love with the performance. That's when Catherine suggested therapy. I didn't want advice. I didn't want forgiveness. I wanted clarity. Dr. Elena Brooks was calm, sharp, and didn't sugarcoat anything. The kind of woman who had seen real messes and didn't flinch. "Tell me what happened," she said. So I did. Everything. The loneliness, the pressure, the lie, the pregnancy, the betrayal. When I finished, she leaned back and said, "Your consent was violated." I broke down right there in her office. "He says it was a test," I said through tears. "To find someone who'd love him for who he really is." "And how do you feel about that?" she asked, like I was on some messed up reality show I never signed up for. She nodded, then asked something that caught me completely off guard. "Before you found out the truth," she said, "did you love him?" "Yes," I answered instantly. "Why?" I opened my mouth and froze. Because he listened. Because he never interrupted. Because he was calm. Because he felt safe. Dr. Brooks folded her hands. Those qualities weren't necessarily who he is. They were the result of him pretending to be deaf. The realization hit like a gut punch. "Are you saying I loved a lie?" I whispered. "I'm saying you loved what the lie allowed you to feel." I sat there, stunned. He still lied. I said, finally, "That matters." "It does," she agreed. "But now the question is, what do you want to do?" I didn't have an answer. I was 7 months pregnant. My savings were shrinking. My future felt like a fogged-up windshield. And Richard, real flawed, cowardly Richard, was still out there, waiting. A week later, I agreed to see him. Not at home, not alone, in therapy. He walked in looking wrecked, thinner, tired, suit wrinkled like he hadn't slept in days. He started to sign without thinking, then stopped himself. "Don't," I said sharply. "Never do that again." He nodded. Dr. Brooks laid down the rules. I could ask anything. He had to answer. No dodging. No excuses. I didn't ease into it. "Why?" I asked. The real reason. "Why did you do this to me?" He stared at the floor, then finally said 2 words I never expected. "Because I'm afraid." And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't over. Not even close. I'm afraid. The words hung in the room like smoke. Afraid of what? I asked, arms crossed over my belly, every muscle tight. Richard swallowed hard. Of being ordinary. Of being boring. Of people realizing I'm awkward, quiet, and honestly kind of bad at human interaction. I blinked. That wasn't the villain speech I expected. "My ex didn't leave because I wasn't romantic enough," he continued. "She left because I made her uncomfortable." I didn't know what to say at parties. I froze during small talk. I was always the weird guy in the corner. Dr. Brooks didn't interrupt. Neither did I. "Pretending to be deaf," he said, gave me an excuse. I didn't have to perform. People didn't expect charm. They expected patience, strength, silence. I scoffed. "So you hid?" "Yes." And I was what? I snapped. Your proof of concept? Your reward for playing disabled long enough. No, he said quickly. You were. He stopped himself, took a breath. You were someone who made me feel safe. I laughed without humor. Funny, that's exactly how you trapped me. Dr. Brooks leaned forward. Richard, do you understand the power imbalance you created? Yes, he said immediately. I do now. You watched her give up her career, she pressed. Watched her reshape her entire life around a lie. I know, he said, voice cracking, and I hate myself for it. I wanted to scream. Instead, I asked a question that had been eating me alive. Did you ever laugh at me? He hesitated. My heart dropped. Sometimes, he admitted, when your signs were way off. Not in a mean way, more like nervous laughter. But yeah, I laughed. Something inside me broke clean in half. You let me look stupid. I whispered. I let my fear make me cruel, he said. I stood up. Dr. Brooks motioned for me to stay seated. But I couldn't. I learned an entire language for you. I said, I quit my job. I trusted you with my body, my future, my child. I know, he said again, and this time it sounded useless. So here's how this works, I continued. You don't touch me. You don't use sign language. You don't make decisions for me. Ever. He nodded. Okay. And if I walk away? I asked. I won't stop you. That surprised me. You'll still support the baby financially, he added. No matter what. I sat back down slowly. The anger was still there, but now it had company. Something heavier. Something complicated. We left therapy without resolution. Just rules. I moved back into the house 2 weeks later, because practicality doesn't care about betrayal. But I slept in the master bedroom. He slept in the guest room. We were roommates bound by history and an unborn child. 3 weeks after that, my water broke. Labor was chaos. Pain. Sweat. Panic. When they placed my daughter on my chest, everything else disappeared. She was perfect. Tiny. Loud. Alive. Richard stood in the corner, crying silently. Do you want to hold her? I asked. He nodded like a kid being handed something sacred. She's ours, I said flatly. And for the first time since the lie came out, I saw real fear in his eyes. Not fear of being alone, but fear of failing someone who didn't care about his act, his money, or his silence. And that scared me even more, because now I had to ask myself the hardest question yet. Can a man who lied so completely ever be trusted to raise a child? Newborns don't care about lies, trauma, or emotional wreckage. They just care about being fed, held, and loved, preferably right now. Those first weeks with my daughter were brutal. No sleep, constant crying. My body felt like it had been hit by a truck, and my emotions were everywhere. Some moments I stared at her in total awe. Other moments I cried in the shower, so no one would hear me break down. Richard surprised me, not with grand gestures or apologies, but with consistency. He was up for every late-night feeding. Change diapers without being asked. Learn how to calm her down when nothing else worked. When I melted down at 3 a.m, convinced I was failing at motherhood, he didn't try to fix me. He just stayed. One night, after hours of pacing the nursery, I finally whispered, "You're actually good at this." He looked at me, exhausted but steady. I had to be. That line stuck with me. We kept going to therapy, sometimes together, sometimes alone. Richard dug into his issues, the fear, the control, the need to hide behind silence. I focused on rebuilding myself. Slowly, painfully. I went back to architecture part-time when the baby was 3 months old. It felt like reclaiming oxygen. Richard supported it without conditions. No pressure. No guilt trips. His mother tried to come back into our lives. I shut that down fast. A year later, I agreed to meet her for coffee. She apologized. Not perfectly, not fully, but enough for boundaries to exist. I made them crystal clear. No manipulation, no control, no tests. She agreed. Mostly. Time passed. Anger softened, not disappeared, but dulled around the edges. Trust came back in pieces, not all at once. Some days I loved him. Some days I didn't. And he accepted that. 3 years later, we had another child. A boy this time. Life got loud. Messy. Real. We renewed our vows quietly on our 10th anniversary. No interpreter. No tricks. Just words. I promise to never lie again, he said. I promise to choose you. I replied, even when it's hard. Now, decades later, I still remember that kitchen. That voice. That moment when silence betrayed me. Was it worth staying? Some days, yes. Some days, no. But it's my life. My choice. And the truth? Real love didn't start in silence. It started the day we stopped pretending. Time is a funny way of smoothing sharp edges without erasing the scars. We got older, slower, wiser, at least a little. The house in Palo Alto stayed, but it changed with us. Walls filled with photos. Kids' art taped to fridge. Noise everywhere. Real noise. The kind I once thought I didn't need. Our daughter grew up strong and sharp, never afraid to speak her mind. Our son followed, quieter, thoughtful, observant. Sometimes I caught Richard watching them with this look on his face, like he still couldn't believe he hadn't messed it all up. We talked now, really talked, about fears, about mistakes, about the lie that almost destroyed us. He never defended it, not once. Every time it came up, he owned it. I was wrong, he'd say. No excuses. Some days that was enough. Other days, the memory still crept in, the kitchen, the note, the sound of his voice breaking the illusion. Those days I needed space. And he gave it. No pushing. No control. That's how I knew he'd changed. We weren't a fairy tale. We were something harder. Something earned. Years later, at our daughter's wedding, I watched Richard walk her down the aisle, tears streaming down his face. Not hidden, not silent, just real. When our son called him for advice about proposing, I listened from the other room, smiling through unexpected tears. And sometimes, late at night, we sit on the porch, hands intertwined, talking about everything and nothing. The past, the future, the mess in between. Do I ever wonder what my life would have been like if I'd left? Of course I do. But I also know this. The man I fell in love with wasn't real, but the man who stayed, who owned his failures, who learned how to speak honestly. He is. Loved and survived because of the lie. It survived because we chose truth after it. Every single day.